Little Mountain is one of those special places for me in the state of South Carolina. I grew up on the Piedmont and I heard about this place and came to visit to see the town itself, of course, and the interesting people here, but it's that little mountain that drew me to it. I'm a naturalist and the geological story here is pretty exciting. Those little rises of rock that stick up like sore thumbs above low areas around them are always interesting. When you've got interesting rock, that forms very interesting soils. The plant community should be special, and it is here. So it'll be fun to take a close look at the history, natural history, the wonderful mix that is Little Mountain.
Nestled at the foot of a beautiful green mountain midway between the Carolina Piedmont and the Low Country lies a village where generations of families have made their living from the land, holding sacred the ties that bind a close-knit community together in the spirit of kinship. Little Mountain, South Carolina. Its rich landscape includes forests of native oak and pine trees stretching north from the confluence of the Broad and Saluda rivers. Once used as hunting grounds by the Cherokee, the area was settled by German and Swiss immigrants who established farms and trading posts in the mid-18th century. After surviving conflicts with the Cherokee and the American Revolution, the introduction of the cotton gin in the 1790s made it possible for these Dutch Fork farmers to generate large profits from the sale of their crops. Their prosperity lasted until the Civil War.
We've been fortunate because we're away from the urban sprawl of Columbia. Now granted, it's just one interstate interchange away from Little Mountain, but we retain that character of community, mainly because we have family land that goes back centuries.
Christopher Cease arrived on the Upton in 1752 with his wife, who was Susanna Anhouse. He had 3 children when he came. As you know, most of the German settlers were sent back up into this area. This was called the backcountry. It actually served as a buffer between the Indian nations and the people who lived on the coast. When they came back, they had to come by foot or by wagon, but they were given by the King of England so much land, 100 acres for the man and his wife, and 50 acres for each additional child. So Christopher came with 250 acres of land on Crims Creek. And they had to settle on creek, so they wanted to because that was their supply of water. Everybody who lives in this section is kin, many times over.
Little Mountain emerged strong in the last decade of the 19th century under the leadership of the town's first mayor, Abraham Noah Boland. When the Columbia, Newberry, and Lawrence Railroad began operation in 1890, Mr. Boland divided his farm to provide land for the depot, as well as a new church, a new school, and other things needed to establish a new town. He also was instrumental in organizing the railroad stop into an official municipality.
Noah Boland, that was my husband's grandfather. He founded this town. He was called the Father of Little Mountain.
I always said Mr. Noah Boland populated Little Mountain with his second cousins.
Abraham Noah Boland. Now that's my great-great-great-grandfather. And of course he gave the land for Little Mountain. He paid out the town of Little Mountain.
Everybody is kin to everybody. One way or the other you kin. So you can't talk about anybody. Well, you're talking about your own kin people, really.
My grandmother's parents were slaves. So therefore they were here on a plantation with some Chapmans. And that is where our original name came from, Chapmans.
My family traces back to Jacob Andrew Bowers, or Andrew Jacob, I'm not sure which it was. He came from Germany, got a land grant from George III, arrived in, I believe, the 1750s. The original plantation was just about a mile and a half west of Little Mountain on what is now Dr. Bowers Road.
Right after the Revolution, you will find that some people left this area. Nobody can prove why they left, but we sometimes think maybe they were more loyalists than they were patriots. But I do think this area helped win the Revolution before they got to cow pens and further up.
The fact that Little Mountain is well over 100 years old in terms of the incorporation of the municipality, but the family land, which goes back really to the mid-1700s, the fact that we have family land like that, it really keeps and provides a sense of community, which normal municipalities, because of the influx and the moving out of people, they don't really have that stability.
The Great Hill from which the town takes its name provides a striking scenic background for the small village below. With its summit towering more than 800 feet above sea level, Little Mountain is a geographer's anomaly. The mountain has been the site for and subject of scientific research for many years.
My sister-in-law and I own the top half of Little Mountain and some of the bottom. We inherited it from my grandfather, who owned it since 1939, I believe it was. It was purchased from a man named S.S. Burge. And there was a 3-story house up there. And on a clear day, you could go up on that third story and see the dam, Lake Murray, and the city of Columbia. But you can't see it now, the trees have grown so high.
For a long time, it was called Ruth's Mountain, I understand. And exactly when it changed to Little Mountain, I don't know. It went by the name of Little Mountain in 1852. Also, it's one of the few places in the state that had that name before the Civil War and continues to have it today.
Fella Ruth did own it. And he sold it for a cow. And his explanation was he could eat the cow, but he couldn't eat the mountain.
Elevation-wise, it's the highest point between the upstate and the Atlantic Ocean. It used to be about 825 feet above sea level, but in the 1960s, early 60s, AT&T built a microwave tower and they shaved off quite a few feet of the mountain.
In World War II, the Army and the Air Force had radio stations up there because they couldn't get over the mountain with the equipment they had. Now they have equipment that will go over it. They don't need that. One time there was about 100 soldiers up there, or airmen or something. Well, it's been cored several different times for minerals, which they found a little bit of everything, kyanite predominantly, metallics, even gold, and food gold. Iron, pyrite, and so forth.
Beautiful face about diameter of rock crystal.
Yeah, I love it. And I've always thought of this as the highest point between Charleston and Greenville. And I guess basically it is. And it's a monadnock. That's a neat word. It
really is.
A little pile of rock, something sticking up like a sore thumb above flat area around it. And usually when you see a monadnock, it's got harder rock than the ground around it, so it wears down more quickly around it. Sticks out like a sore thumb. And the rock here is a quartzite, really, with a lot of kyanite. That's perophyllite, and again, I don't see that anywhere except on Little Mountain in my experience, at least in large amounts. So this was associated with some of that igneous activity in the past, and then of course it got squeezed, so this is metamorphic rock and igneous rock all mixed together, which is nice.
I'm told that the Confederates hid lead upon the mountain on the left side, which is now Drew Island Road, in their attempts to keep lead for bullets, mini balls and stuff. They were headed to Virginia with it, but they didn't get there. The Yankees evidently got too close on them, so they hid it on the mountain. And after the Confederate War was over, evidently, I don't know who he was, would sell lead, but he never would let anyone go with him to they thought it was a lead mine, but it wasn't, it was hidden lead.
In 1865, where Sherman's troops, the Union troops, camped. This is where we live now. They came there, and they went to the home where my mother and grandmother and this portion of the family was there since the 1800s. They went to the house, and they poured molasses into the piano, and it's just a mean thing to do. And they took all the food in the house and this kind of things. Anyway, my folks at the time, they knew they were coming, and they took all the livestock and hid them away from the home. And they put dresses on the little boys because they heard rumors that the Union troops were killing the little boys so they wouldn't be able to grow up and fight against the Union troops in the future.
In the decades that followed, many businesses thrived in this small community. From the Farmers and Merchants Bank to the Wise Hotel, Little Mountain was a bustling place to be.
My daddy and the Bolins up there, everybody had farms, so you worked in the farm. We hoed cotton and picked cotton and had gardens and canning, but back then we had cotton mills,
My husband and his brothers went off to work on the railroad, and my sister-in-law and I helped run the farm with their father. Run combines, pick cotton, did it all. Sometimes we'd have 15 out there picking cotton, but you have a cotton picking sack on your back, and you'd have to weigh it to see how much you picked every day.
What did I do after school? I went home, got undressed from going to school, and got to the cotton field. I either pulled off peanuts or either picked up sweet potatoes.
A company was founded shortly after 1890 when the Columbia, Newberry, and Lawrence Railroad was built from Columbia through Chapin, through Little Mountain to Prosperity, Newberry, Clinton, and then to Lawrence. A company was established to subdivide and sell lots on Little Mountain, and indeed they were slightly successful, but not very much.
My grandfather, on making his rounds to the sick and his other patients, would sometimes go to sleep in the buggy, and the horse would just take him home and park it in the yard. He was a GP, so he treated everyone, but he treated the normal ailments, broken bones. I've got, in fact, a ledger. It gave a list of his patients, the day he treated them, what the diagnosis was, and how much he charged. Supposedly, Granddaddy had a specialty, which was STDs. And supposedly people from all over the state, men from all over the state, came to my grandfather for treatment. He made his own medicine. Whether it worked or not, I suspect it probably didn't do that much, but before penicillin, I mean, there was not that much. But during the day, white men came to his office, and at night, black men came to his office, and he treated both.
To grow up here in Little Mountain then was a very nice place. When we lived in the alley, which is right across the street over there was a white family that lived right in front of where the doctor's office is, that we shared one tricycle together. We took turns riding that tricycle. It was like you were family with these people. And even yet today, that family and myself are very close. Or we would walk to the Albert Frick's to get a cone of ice cream, and the depot was still in Little Mountain, which is not there now, and we would walk and sit on that depot and eat ice cream. It was wonderful to live here. The only problem we had was then that there were two different schools, and at that time it wasn't a problem because it was all we knew of, you going to the black school and the white school to the white school. So that was never a problem, but it's been wonderful to live here.
Have wonderful memories of school. We had operettas, and I was Little Red Riding Hood and the Sleeping Beauty and all that. We had little paper costumes my mother would make, and I just have wonderful memories of this school. And of course, Mr. Noah Boland, my husband's grandfather, he gave the land and started this school, 1909. That's when that original building was built and is still standing.
The school created a center of activity for the people of Little Mountain, past and present.
We had the #1 gym in the whole state. It was A1. There was no such thing as like the gym we had. So I started playing basketball in the 8th grade and loved it. We won championships and it was just wonderful.
In the 1st and 2nd grade, everybody wanted to be a 3rd grader. 3rd graders during the winter got to go out and bring in coal. So it built an excuse to leave the classroom.
There was an old man named George Bates. George Bates, when I first started to school, was always here to make fires in the stove.
I can also remember donkey basketball. They had fundraisers. And I'm not sure who put on the fundraiser, but they brought in a truckload of donkeys with rubber shoes, and you'd get men from the community to be foolish enough to ride these donkeys up and down the court playing basketball.
When the school enlarged, they had no room for all the students, so they had to put classrooms in the gym. But the floor's still there, and now with all the renovation they're doing, they're going to renovate and reuse the old gym. They're going to put it back to its original condition. So I'm thrilled about that, and I hope I'm still living long enough I can go in there and throw a basketball and I go.
As I recall, this is the biggest gymnasium in Newberry County, outside of Newberry College.
Really?
At one time, the school district wanted to close this school building and build a new elementary school between here and Mid-Carolina High School. And it was very difficult. Citizens didn't like it, and we tried hard to resist that, and we had some luck. The net result is 15 or more years later, we have $15 million of school improvements being made at the Little Mountain Elementary School. Long overdue, but at long last, the educational establishment in this county recognizes that the Little Mountain School is a very important component of the educational system in Newberry County, and they want it to stay here. And we want this school to stay here also, because if you take away the school from a community, guess what? Grass grows in the streets very soon. We don't want grass growing in any streets in this community.
Little Mountain School stands as a monument to the visionary citizens of today and yesterday.
I'm so thankful they didn't tear it down. They deliberated about it a long time. And so now it's just grown and progressed and enlarged. And now my grandson, my youngest grandson, who has spina bifida, he's paralyzed from his waist down. And he goes to school here and just loves it. It's really a stronghold for this whole community.
We had to walk to school, and the white kids rode to school. We had to be in a wood building for school, and they had the brick building. And their school went from 1st through 12 years. Ours only went 1st through 8 years. Once we left 8th grade, we had to relocate and live with somebody else, or somebody carry us all the way to Newberry to go to a high school. That was the only difference. But at that time, nobody made a big issue of it because it was traditional, so we lived with it. We went to school right where I live, and the old school is still standing there. That building was a 2-room wooden building with 2 chimneys where you built a fire to keep warm. Regards to how hot it got, you had to stand the heat because all you could do was raise the windows. Had wood benches that only had a little desk in front of it, and that was school for us.
I remember that most of the streets in Little Mountain were dirt. I can remember the original post office depot.
Inside of the Little Mountain Depot, which was the best depot on CNNL line. Brick, the only brick one.
Although it never was in operation as a depot during my lifetime. It was for sometime in the mid to late 1950s, a dry cleaning shop.
Like I remember when I was a little kid, I would lay down in the backyard, this is during World War II, and the sky would be just black with planes flying over. And the train would go by with tanks and this kind of thing on them. And my dad was in the Army Air Corps at Columbia at the time. He used to fly airplanes over and drop little parachutes out from me on the ground.
Well, in my day and time, I have seen a train come in from Prosperity, New Jersey, go on the siding. Also, train from Columbia come up. And that's what brought all the people in.
We were able to purchase some land of our own on Mountain Street, where there's now the only black neighborhood that is in Little Mountain. During the time we were on the farm, we had an aunt and a great uncle that ran the only black restaurant that was in Little Mountain at that time. And it was in the little alley part there behind the Masonic Temple here in Little Mountain. Gus Chapman owned it first. They loved to fry fish. And on one side was a barber shop, which was owned by a black man also. Friday evenings and Saturdays, this is only place the blacks had to go out to eat, was there. If you want to go out, besides eating at home, you went there to eat fish and hot dogs and drinks. And it's a nice place for us to go. The weekends, after you've worked all week, that was a getaway place for the blacks.
And the post office was a good hangout too, real good hangout. It was 3 general stores here right on the main street at that time.
They were general merchandise stores to begin with. You could buy anything from a horse collar to Hershey's, little Hershey's Kisses, you know. That big old stove, men would be standing around it, you know, and it would be so warm, and they would grind coffee. Oh, to me, that was the best smell.
I tell my wife every morning, she said, what took you so long to get the mail? I said, well, I had to go by Frick's Mall to get the news.
Opened in 1929, Reunion Day. Sure did. That's the day they opened it. They didn't have anything in there except some number 310 tub with drinks in it, my granddaddy said. And they put fuel in the tanks with 5-gallon buckets.
I'm looking for some smoked purple worms. It's one of the hottest worms in Lake Murray right now. All you throw it out there and just wind it on top of the water, and the fish goes crazy over it. A lot of people don't know that. That's the reason I do my shopping here at Frick's Mall at Little Mountain.
My dad's store was on the corner of Main and Primary Street. It was originally Wise Brothers. 2 brothers here in Little Mountain had built the store somewhere around 1913. It was a general store. By that we mean hardware, clothing, notions, dry goods, feed and seed, fertilizer, animal feed, and a whole lot of groceries.
At Wise's store, Nora Wise made hats. So you could go down there to buy hats.
We had the old time telephones, and the lady that run the switchboard, she knew everything that went on in town, and she could tell you everything. You had to watch and hear from her more than anybody else.
My brother and I gave quite a workout to the piano stool. It was right under the telephone, which was on the wall, and we would climb on it, pick up the receiver, and almost everyone had a party line.
She could hear anything that was said, went through that switchboard. She knew when somebody died or when somebody was doing something wrong. She knew everything.
superstition and using has always been prevalent here. And I think probably today it still is. First, I think you had to believe it. Of course, if you really believe in mind over matter, you can see how people living under those conditions would have depended on that quite a bit. And it had to do with scripture. And usually there was some verse that you repeated from the Bible. It certainly would be a belief that doing certain things would bring about healing. For instance, would rub kernel of corn over a sore spot and then plant it somewhere. And when it came up, I suppose whatever it was that ails you would be gone. Or it could be saying a certain thing.
We had a cook stove which was made out of iron, you know, and you used wood, just little sticks of wood, and then it had a warming oven across the top. They would make their own bread. Well, they did at the old house, but at my house, and I've got it at my house. It was called the sourdough jar. They would keep that starter. It would ferment, and that's how they made the homemade bread every day, and it would rise. And so we had our own bread, and then they would have this sugar cane or sorghum cane, and make our own molasses. And I can see the old mule that he'd go round and round, where they would squeeze that juice into this big old pan, and they would cook the syrup, and we'd have to skim off the top when it would foam up, you know. And then we'd go home at night and have that homemade bread, and Mama had cream. We had cows, and they'd skim off the cream off the top, and then we'd put that heavy cream on top of that homemade bread molasses. So I just can't imagine people even thinking about trying to do something like that now.
So for breakfast, we would have grits, we would have sausage and biscuits, bacon and eggs. A real big breakfast. I remember asking my grandmother one time, Mama Cease, why do you cook all of this? And her reply was that when Grandpa Cease or when Claude, either one, left to see their patients, she didn't know whether they were going to be back in the middle of the day or not. So she gave them a substantial meal. Well, we always grew our own cantaloupes. We had a cow. Claude always milked when he came home in the afternoon. If he didn't get home in time, Mother would milk. She knew how. Then he came home one day and said, we will have to get rid of the cow because a new law has been passed and you can only use pasteurized milk. So we always had to set the example.
For breakfast, we'd have ham that came off of the farm because we did our own butchering. And then at lunchtime, we'd always have vegetables and maybe go out and kill a chicken out of the yard and made bread every day, made pies every day. You stayed busy, very busy.
You'd have an ice box, which was an insulated wooden box, and the ice truck would come from Prosperity with big old blocks of ice and these tongs, you know, and you'd get a big block of ice and put in that wooden box. And it would last a week until the ice truck came back again. We'd draw water out of the well and fill 2 big tubs. And our mother would have a wash pot where she heated the big old iron pots, just jug them up and down in that lye soap and that hot water. So then that's how we got our 1 weekly bath. After she got through doing the laundry once a week, then we would get in those tubs of water and take a bath.
But we could roam the woods from the time we got up in the morning until we come home to eat in the afternoon. Then you had to take a bath, but you had to rest. You could go back out after you had rested for an hour. But just as long as we were home by supper time, Claude would come out on the porch and we had a bell that you could ring for meals, and he would ring that bell. We would know it was time to eat. But they didn't worry about us.
We had a little group of children, and we would get into riding our bicycles and building slingshots and having Chinaberry wars.
And would always have barbecues in summertime. It would be in May with the Cumberlanders because they had so many birthdays that would, and it would be as many as 200 people there at that time. And then we started going to the park for barbecues in the last couple years. So barbecue's a big thing here.
I like about the people and the food and the barbecue.
Let's go across the butt there. And more ham. He's floating around on the Atlantic somewhere.
Down on the Atlantic.
Floating around on the Atlantic. This low country just got a Milwaukee beer in it.
Oh, really?
It's got a beer in it.
Okay.
I'll try that one first.
No.
And I'll try this one second.
When I first came here, we had sunrise service on the mountaintop. And it was so to see how people would come from everywhere to go to sunrise service up there. And at that time, it was soldiers from, I guess, Korea was up there doing maneuvers and practicing. And they would always have it clean and flowers and all up there for us.
But there was a flat area, there was an open area, there were 3 crosses there, and all the community churches held Easter sunrise there.
And you could see the lake and the sun coming up. It was beautiful up there, very beautiful. And then we'd go up and pick huckleberries to make pies in the summertime, in springtime, and blackberries up there.
South Carolina's oldest folk festival, the Little Mountain Reunion, is held on the first Saturday of August each summer.
The birth of the Little Mountain Reunion more than 100 years ago in the 1880s, it was held at Reunion Springs, which are at the foot of the mountain. It was fundamentally a Newberry College reunion for many years, and then it became a reunion for not only Newberry College, but the Dutch Fork community in general.
And the kitchen was I was always head of the kitchen and getting the barbecue together there and getting workers. And you'd work all year just to work that weekend. It's a big event too.
And everybody got so excited about the Little Mountain Reunion. We'd go to the spring and drink out of the spring, and then you'd walk all the way to the top of the mountain. And then you'd have all the politicians. They had bleachers, way up the side of the mountain. And we'd sit there and all these politicians would, like they do now, talk on and on and on. Barbecuing chickens on these racks, just hundreds of chickens and hogs. All the children, that was an exciting time way back then for this whole community in town. And people would come on the train from all over and get off over at the depot.
There are not many festivals which are devoted to people and their friends and their relatives. Families need to get together a little more than that every year to keep getting along well. So the reunion ran strong, I understand, until about World War II, maybe 1940. I do know one interesting story. In 1938 or 37, there was a man who was a state circuit judge from, I think it was Saluda. His name was Ramage, R-A-M-A-G-E. He dropped dead talking at the reunion in about 1937. It was the first Saturday in August, and I think he just gave out. As far as I know, that's the only death we have had. I hope we don't have any more.
Strom Thurmond would always come to the reunion, And he would always come in the kitchen and give us all, the ladies that had worked so hard, a hug.
The Reunion Festival was renewed in 1976 as a bicentennial project. It was a joint venture of the town government and the Ruatan Club. At that point in time, Mayor Leicester Giroux, along with Pastor James Taylor, who was president of the Ruatan Club and also pastor of Mount Tabor Lutheran Church, along with James Hall, town clerk, Margaret Cease Giroux, Julie Hamilton McLeod, and yours truly, Councilman Johnson, headed the Bicentennial Committee. There were a number of other citizens who really came together and worked very hard and headed up each of the activities for the Reunion Festival.
This celebration has inspired many of its own special memories and traditions over the years. In the early 1900s, for example, one of the community's rites of passage was for a young man to ask the young lady he was courting to walk up the mountain with him during the festival. Weathering change and entering the modern world with grace and good humor, the town of Little Mountain today continues to be a charming and content place.
Oh, that's a beautiful one.
Well, when we first moved here, we're, of course, Yankees, still recovering Yankees, but...
We were told we were the first Yankees to live here.
Oh, yes.
Which is quite a stigma to get over.
Families who have lived here for generations welcome newcomers with open arms.
The leaders in the community began to change as a result of new, fresh people moving into the community. And the net result is we have had I would call it a healthy mindset in Little Mountain, whereas in many communities, not quite so healthy a mindset exists.
Well, one of the things we found is that people are just very supportive, and whether it was our neighbors who claimed they had never met a Yankee before, but they also fed us pretty much every night for the first 6 months we lived here, to the other business people in town who have come forward and been very supportive and very helpful with us getting our business started. And it's just amazing. I mean, we've been here relatively a long time, but yet when you think of the people who've lived here 70, 80 years, they make us feel like we're part of the family.
From the very beginning when we started Reunion Park, Hunter Caldwell helped us acquire land and helped us improve the park. There are individuals like Sam and Roxy Derrick who helped and assisted with the J.K.S. Derrick Medical Center, the new fire department EMT building, the helipad.
History of this community is consistent with people who are dedicated to ways of life that, again, promote social interaction, a concern for the community, and also for nature.
And one of the best things that's ever happened to our community is the deeding and the conservation of some 44 acres called Rocky Branch.
We're actually on Little Mountain at Rocky Branch. It originally was Sam's grandfather's, and it was passed down to Sam, and he gave me this particular area, and then I gave it away.
So this is one of the most important areas for nature in the Midlands area of South Carolina and possibly the whole state.
I've been asked by the Derrick family and by Buddy Johnson to come out here and do a botanical survey of the Little Mountain area. So an interesting diversity of plants between the stream bottom, at the bottom of the mountain, all the way up to the top where it's very dry.
See up there toward the top of the branches, you can see the mountain laurel still in flower, and then the magnolia in the background.
It's so significant to our community with the fact that that not only is the area preserved, but we're going to be able to develop a trailhead and trails down through this natural area to show the flora and fauna and the real special nature of the Rocky Branch and the waterfall.
One of the most exciting finds that we have is a plant called the Piedmont aster. Only found in this part of the state. It's a plant that is not found elsewhere other than North Carolina, so we have a very rare plant. It's actually a candidate species for federal listing for rare,
My friends, it's a pleasure to be here. We thank you and appreciate each of you coming and participating in this very, very meaningful event. Many of you have heard me say at the reunion every August that Little Mountain, I think, is a garden spot of the east coast of the United States of America. Well, look around this environment and you will clearly agree with that statement.
I think what you've done here is kind of magical in a way. You've done something very special, and you're to be congratulated for it. And this is quite a celebration. And of course, you were heavily involved with this, but so were so many other people. One person can make a difference, a crowd of people can make magic, and you've done that. And you've taken care of a special place. I applaud you for that. The legacy of this place will continue after we've gone. Doesn't that make you feel good? I'm proud of you.
I hope you can enjoy this beautiful area, and we're just glad to have you. I'm thrilled, I'm honored. Good to see everybody.
Most Piedmont sites like this have been changed drastically. Thank goodness you folks have taken care of it and are willing to leave that as a legacy to people who come after us. To see that diversity.
With expansion and growth imminent on the horizon, the community is now working to find balance and sustainability. Their desire to preserve their traditional way of life, precious natural resources, and the close-knit sense of community is what makes this place so special.
As we got to know them, just great people in Little Mountain, just amazing people. They'd do anything for you, help you out.
And if you have a community program which encourages participation and recognition and appreciation, the community will be a better place to live and work and play and worship.
And we're very fortunate, glad that we can come home again.
What amazes me more is the fact that so many people come back to the mountain.
On this rededication of this wonderful school, it is my goal and my prayer that we take this opportunity to rededicate ourselves to the young people of this community.
And it's wonderful to see all this come to fruition finally. The school has always been a cornerstone, and the rededication of this facility, what really strikes me is all of the wonderful stories that we've heard. And I think everyone can see right now that things have been done and redone. But to listen to all those people that played basketball in here, my good buddy I play golf with, Mr. Billy Lindler.
I wish I was about 50 years younger than that.
He used to be the leading scorer here at Little Mountain, and to see the tears in their eyes when they walk in, and the stories from Miss Betty Page when she was here and got to see the gymnasium and shoot the basketball.
And the place was packed, and it was the finals, and I was standing over there in that corner, right on the edge, and the place was full, and I shot a goal from over there, and it went in that basket.
And did the crowd go wild?
They went wild. Miracles still happen. Oh, miracles still happen. Did you get that?
Also, I did.
You're a good old lady. Yeah, I'm a good old lady.
You're a good old lady.
You got that right.
That's all right. I'm still a lady.
We're at the Louis Derrick Senior Center here in Little Mountain, South Carolina.
This is, I can't say it like Walt could, but I'd love to hear it. This is truly a great day. But, for anyone that comes here and visits, not only we hope you see, as everybody has pointed out, the mountain and the serenity around here in the mountain setting, but when you do come here, hopefully when you leave, know that you've had a benefit from it and enjoy it.
All folks in the community are dropping by and enjoying the social activities.
Second?
Oh, I really enjoy it. So you know when you're home alone, this is a blessing for me.
Little Mountain, South Carolina.
We will take the best components of the past and combine them with the best of what the future has to offer. We will create not only a building, but an organization that is built to last.
Y'all come back now.
One of my fonder memories involved the post office. The post office was formerly downtown where the little stores are. I went there one morning, and a guy said, you know, your term is up as mayor next month. And I said, that's right. He said, well, we'll never forget you. And I thought, my gosh, what is that guy telling me? I said, you don't say. He says, yeah, you're the guy who got us cable television. I don't know how we can live without it. So you just never know what people are going to say to you.